What are predicted points? What is explosiveness? And what do these two stats tell us about Tennessee's offense in 2023? We're going to talk about those three things today. I'm going to take you through a little lesson on each one of those. If you're already familiar with the concept of predicted points and explosiveness, I made another video that recaps the most explosive plays Tennessee had in 2022. You might want to check that one out. The link is in the description. There should be a link on the screen right now that you can click to. If you don't know what I'm talking about with predicted points or explosiveness, then this video is for you. I'd invite you to stick around. All right, so predicted points is just a statistical representation of a concept you understand already as a football fan. Field position matters, right? Like, you know, field position matters from watching games. There's a couple of really famous examples in Tennessee football history of field position mattering. If you think about the 2001 game against Georgia, the hobnail boot game, Travis Stevens scores late on a screen pass. Looks like Tennessee's going to win the game. They elect to squib kick, give Georgia really good field position, and then Georgia comes down the field and, of course, breaks everybody's heart. 15 years later, Tennessee gives up a late touchdown to Georgia. Looks like the Bulldogs are going to win, but they get a celebration penalty, which pushes the kickoff back. And then a great return by Evan Berry.
Eric Berry, Eric Berry, Eric Berry, Eric Berry.
No, Evan Berry sets the balls up in great field position, close enough for Josh Dobbs to heave a pass down, of course, caught by Juwan Jennings. That's two games right there where field position late in the game made a huge difference in those games. If that field position, if either team doesn't get the field position they do to set up their last drive, the game probably turns out the other way. What a turn of events. So predicted points gives you a statistical representation of how much field position matters. Imagine all the drives that have ever started 1st and 10 at the 20-yard line. Take the result of all of those drives. Some of them ended in touchdowns. Lots of them ended in punts. Some of them ended in points for the other team because there was a pick six or maybe a fumble that rolled all the way back to the goal line and ended up being a safety. You take the average result of all of those drives, and that gives you a number predicted points for 1st and 10 at the 20-yard line. It turns out to be 0.6 points. Now imagine all the drives that started at the opponent's 40-yard line. A lot more of those are going to end in touchdowns and field goals. Fewer of them are going to end in punts. So the expected points or predicted points for drives that start at the opponent's 40 is going to be higher. That number turns out to be about 3.8 points. So that information can give us another statistic, and that is predicted points added. If you run a play 1st and 10 from your 20-yard line, and you get all the way down to the opponent's 40, you have added 3.2 predicted points to your situation. So that play was worth plus 3.2 predicted points added. By the way, you'll hear this stat called both expected points and predicted points. I get most of my data from collegefootballdata.com, and they call it predicted points. So since they call it predicted points, I'm going to call it predicted points.
His mama named him Clay. I'm going to call him Clay.
And there's a little bit more that we can do with this stat as well. When we combine it with a stat called success, we get something called explosiveness. So a successful play is one that gets 50% of the yards to go on 1st down, 70% of the yards to go on 2nd down, or is a 3rd or 4th down conversion. So when you take the plays that are marked successful based on that criteria, and you measure their predicted points added, that gives you a stat called explosiveness. And so then you can use that to track which plays a team runs that are the most explosive plays. You can also measure how explosive an offense is by averaging the predicted points added on their explosive plays. So let's take a look at one of Tennessee's most explosive plays from the 2022 season. This comes against Florida. This plays in the second quarter, 12:41 left in the second quarter. Florida had just scored to go up 7-3. And Tennessee had the ball 1st and 10 at their own 25. They're going to run a play called Hoss. This is a passing concept that's used a lot in college and the NFL. Hoss is simply the outside receiver runs a hitch and the slot receiver runs a seam. And you'll see that happen on both sides. Tennessee has a little wrinkle here. They motion Jalen Hyatt out to the outside of the formation, so he becomes the one who's going to run a hitch. Brew McCoy is in the slot. He's going to run the seam. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see those two receivers doing the same thing. Sometimes you'll hear this play called Hoss juke. A juke route is that seam route, but it's adjusted to what the defense has given them. So if you keep your eyes on that receiver, you'll see him run about a 10-yard dig. But here, Hoss, like Waylon Jennings was the man called Hoss or Hoss juke, you see run right here. It's a perfect play in this situation because Florida's defense completely bust on it. The safety for Florida stands flat-footed, lets Brew McCoy run right by him, and they don't score on the play. They get down to the 5-yard line, but it gives Tennessee a plus 4.19 predicted points added on this play. Very explosive play. So that sets Tennessee up at the 5-yard line. 2 plays later, Hendon Hooker runs it in, finds touchdown city. So another way we can use this explosiveness stat is by looking at which offenses are the most explosive ones. They're going to be the ones scoring the most points. And of course, the way Josh Heupel runs his offense, that's what he's going to be looking for. So I pulled out the SEC teams from the 2022 year that had a success rate over 50%. That means that over 50% of their plays got half the yards to go on first down, 70% of the yards to go on second down, or was a third or fourth down conversion. And when you average the predicted points added on those successful plays, you can measure each team's explosiveness. There were 4 teams in the SEC that stood out in terms of explosiveness. They're the 4 that you would expect. It was Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. Alabama's offense was just barely more explosive by a 100th of a point more explosive than Tennessee's offense, and then Georgia and LSU tied behind that. So how does this help us understand Tennessee's offense? We're going to look throughout the season. Something I'm going to be tracking and making videos about here and tracking over on the blog, cornfromajar.com. We're going to be watching for what are Tennessee's most explosive plays. Is Tennessee keeping pace with those SEC leaders in terms of explosiveness? Because that's something that this offense obviously can be a high-scoring, high-powered offense, something that they're going to want to do to repeat the success that they had last year, and something we're going to be tracking throughout the season on Corn from a Jar. Thank you for watching. If you found this video useful, hit that thumbs up for me. And thanks to all you folks on Rocky Top for getting your corn from a jar.